Beyond the headlines and historic legends, prison life is defined by something quieter routine. Inside institutions like Alcatraz, San Quentin, and Rikers Island, every hour is structured, and every movement recorded. Nights settled differently across each institution, but procedure never stopped. At Alcatraz, officers continued scheduled counts, flashlights cutting across bars, verifying each figure against the official roster. Sleep came in fragments. The echo of footsteps along steel galleries reminded inmates that surveillance did not pause, even when conversation and movement officially ended. If an inmate shifted beneath blankets during count, officers required visible movement or verbal acknowledgement. The system depended on certainty, not assumption. It was this insistence on verification that built Alcatraz's reputation. Geography mattered, but documentation and repetition formed the prison's real perimeter. When morning returned, routine began again without announcement. Doors unlocked in sequence, and another day followed the same structured progression. For many incarcerated there, time blurred into cycles of count, work, meal, and confinement. Predictability became both stabilizing and suffocating. At San Quentin Rehabilitation Center, mornings increasingly included program enrollment checks. Participants reported to classrooms where attendance was logged with institutional precision. Education initiatives aimed to reduce recidivism, but participation required sustained behavioral compliance. Infractions could suspend access to courses or vocational training. In the media center at San Quentin, select inmates contributed to supervised publications and audio programming. These activities operated under administrative review and strict guidelines. Movement between housing units required staggered scheduling. Officers coordinated corridors to prevent overlapping groups, minimizing potential conflict points. Rikers Island followed a faster tempo. Court calendars dictated early wake-ups, and transport officers coordinated departures before city traffic intensified. Detainees waited in holding areas for processing. Delays were common, but documentation tracked each transfer to prevent administrative gaps. Medical clinics within Rikers handled chronic conditions and urgent needs. Given the facility's size, healthcare logistics demanded constant coordination between housing and clinic staff. Across all three institutions, grievance systems allowed inmates to file formal complaints. These processes were structured, documented, and reviewed through administrative channels. At Alcatraz, privileges were limited compared to modern facilities. Still, earned trust could translate into preferred work assignments or small allowances. The industry's building remained central to island operations. Laundry steam rose daily as military uniforms were processed under federal contract. Supply boats docked on scheduled days, unloading food and materials. Officers monitored cargo carefully, understanding that any unauthorized item represented risk. Even recreation followed documentation protocols. Yard access was logged, and duration strictly timed before inmates returned to controlled interiors. At San Quentin, rehabilitation programs extended to restorative justice initiatives in later years. Participation involved facilitated dialogue and structured accountability exercises. These programs required screening and approval. Not every inmate qualified, reinforcing institutional emphasis on behavior-based access. Rikers Island continued managing population turnover at high volume. Intake classifications adjusted frequently as court outcomes altered housing status. Tensions sometimes surfaced within dormitory-style units. Officers intervened through mediation, separation, or disciplinary procedures when necessary. Alcatraz, by contrast, housed a smaller, more controlled population. Its design emphasized individual cells, limiting direct inmate contact outside structured settings. Still, isolation carried psychological weight. Former inmates later described the monotony as one of the institution's most defining features. Count sheets accumulated daily, archived meticulously. Every verification built a written history of presence and absence. San Quentin's evolving mission reflected broader shifts in correctional philosophy. Rehabilitation increasingly joined punishment as a formal objective. Rikers Island faced public scrutiny over operational challenges. administrative reforms aimed to address safety, healthcare, and infrastructure concerns. Yet daily routine remained constant across decades. Wake up, count, meals, work, supervision, documentation, the sequence rarely changed. At Alcatraz, the final evening count marked closure of another controlled cycle. Officers confirmed numbers before securing tiers for the night. The island's currents moved unseen beyond the walls, but inside, routine defined reality more than geography ever could. San Quentin's evening programming concluded under staff observation. Participants returned to housing units, carrying materials reviewed before entry. Rikers processed late-night arrivals once again, intake officers continuing administrative tasks beneath fluorescent lighting. Across these institutions, systems operated on layered verification. Redundancy prevented oversight, reinforcing institutional stability. For inmates, adaptation meant understanding routine deeply. Those who complied navigated daily life with fewer disruptions. For staff, vigilance required consistency. Fatigue could not interrupt count procedures or movement controls. And when absence occurred, when a bunk appeared occupied but felt wrong, it was the routine itself that revealed it. Because in prisons built on repetition, even the smallest deviation stands out. If this story kept you watching, the next one will stay with you even longer. Subscribe for more real prison documentaries. Routine does not end when headlines fade. Inside correctional institutions, systems continue operating long after public attention shifts elsewhere. At Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, the daily structure remained largely unchanged until its closure in 1963. Rising operational costs and deteriorating infrastructure ultimately made continued use impractical. Fresh water had to be barged to the island regularly. Supplies arrived by boat, and maintenance expenses exceeded those of mainland facilities. Even so, its reputation as an escape-proof prison endured, shaped as much by disciplined routine as by the cold waters surrounding it. When the facility closed, remaining inmates were transferred to other federal institutions. Documentation followed each man, preserving administrative continuity. Today, Alcatraz stands as a historic site managed by the National Park Service. Visitors walk former cell houses, observing preserved remnants of daily life. Interpretive materials describe the strict schedules once enforced within those walls, emphasizing counts, work assignments, and constant supervision. The clang of steel doors is now demonstrated for tourists rather than inmates, transforming routine into historical exhibit. San Quentin Rehabilitation Center continues operating, though its mission has evolved significantly over decades of policy reform. In recent years, California officials announced plans to transform San Quentin into a model emphasizing rehabilitation and education over traditional punitive frameworks. Programs expanded to include vocational certifications, college courses, and restorative justice initiatives under structured oversight. Count procedures remain central, but administrative focus increasingly integrates reentry preparation into daily schedules. Inmates eligible for programming attend classes, workshops, and counseling sessions that occupy structured blocks of time. Correctional officers coordinate movement between educational buildings and housing units, maintaining security while facilitating program access. Rikers Island, operated by New York City, faces ongoing structural and policy challenges. Plans to close the complex and replace it with borough-based facilities remain under development. Despite proposed closures, daily operations continue. Intake processing, housing management, medical care, and court transports still follow strict scheduling. Population fluctuations require constant classification adjustments. Housing assignments shift as court outcomes change detainee status. Rikers facilities conduct multiple daily counts, mirroring procedures found in state and federal prisons nationwide. Health services operate within each housing area, addressing chronic and urgent needs under city correctional health guidelines. Reform initiatives at Rikers include efforts to reduce violence, improve medical access, and expand supportive programming. Yet even amid reform, routine defines daily existence. Wake-up calls, line movements, supervised meals, structured recreation. At San Quentin, Partnerships with nonprofit organizations support educational programming under formal agreements and security protocols. Graduation ceremonies for program completers occur inside secure perimeters, witnessed by approved guests and staff. At Alcatraz, former inmates once described the predictability as both protective and oppressive. Historical records show that consistent scheduling minimized uncertainty, reinforcing control through repetition rather than constant force. Across all three institutions, documentation remains foundational. Logs track movement, medical visits, disciplinary actions, and release dates. Correctional systems rely on layered accountability, ensuring no inmate moves unrecorded between secure spaces. Rehabilitation efforts, where implemented, operate within that framework rather than outside it. Even recreational time requires escort, roster verification, and supervised duration. For staff, training emphasizes procedure adherence. Deviation risks compromise of institutional safety. For inmates, understanding procedure can reduce friction, while noncompliance triggers structured disciplinary responses. Public perception often focuses on extraordinary incidents, yet daily prison life consists largely of structured repetition. Meals prepared and served on schedule. Counts verified. Lights dimmed. Logs completed. When Alcatraz closed, its physical isolation ended, but its procedural legacy influenced future correctional design. San Quentin's transformation reflects broader debates over incarceration philosophy in the United States. Rikers Island's future remains subject to political decisions, yet its present remains governed by daily operational necessity. In each facility, routine shapes identity for staff and inmates alike. Because beyond headlines and reform announcements, the reality of incarceration rests on structured time. And when a count is called, every individual must still stand and be seen.